So hello, I am Joel Brody. I head growth for the US for GameRefinery, which is a liftoff company. Liftoff is a leading growth acceleration platform for mobile apps, and we help to scale up monetization and marketing of mobile apps. And then as part of GameRefinery, we deconstruct games, and we help to scale up your data intelligence on what are the best practices for the most successful games out on the market today. So that's myself. I will let my colleagues here introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Jenny. They let me back up on stage again. So still at Together Labs, at least last I heard. So I do the subscription monetization management for the team across a variety of different platforms, and looking forward to sharing some of that in detail with you guys today.
Hey everyone, my name is Kenny Kawal. Most recently, I was with a company called Fabulous. Fabulous, if you're not familiar with them, they're a routine building app that helps individuals focus on specific goals. So if your goal is to get better sleep, eat healthier, create more focus throughout your day, they help you create specific routines for that. In terms of my responsibilities there, paid and organic growth, monetization, as well as conversion rate optimization.
Okay, to start us off, I want to ask a question to the audience. So, raise your hands. How many of you have at least 3 subscriptions that you pay for a month? Okay, keep your hands risen if you have 5 per month. 10 per month? More than 15 per month. Yeah, y'all haven't actually really thought about this. So I did. And what I did a little experiment myself, and I went and I counted the number of subscriptions that I pay for, and what I came up for myself was 16 subscriptions, totaling $220 a month, and this doesn't include internet mobile access. So the first thing is, once House of Dragons ends, I'm canceling HBO. But question for y'all, how many subscriptions do you have per month? And are we in danger of reaching peak subscription? And if so, how do you factor this when you design your own app's monetization strategy?
Absolutely. So I actually went and did this homework in advance, and it was harder than you'd think. I have subscriptions at different places, at Canva, at Google. Google One is what they're calling it now for all my photos, and I keep having to pay them more. So it was actually kind of hard to figure out how many subscriptions I had.
So I have 17 subscriptions because I pay Google money too.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of money too.
Yes.
So I came up with 9 subscriptions that I pay for. Some are monthly, some are annual, which is nice. I do fork over the annual to Google to get that slight discount. However, there are a couple of subscriptions I have access to that I'm not paying for. And so I'm not going to mention which of my awesome friends have hooked me up with passwords, but password sharing is absolutely something that is included in these subscriptions. And how do you combat that as someone on the subscriber side? So it's tricky. And I too, get a little bit of extra access from some nice friends. So it's tricky to be on both sides of that. My subscription spending totals about $100 a month when you average it out.
Okay, better than me. Kevin?
Same boat as like everybody else. I think half of my subscriptions are piggybacked.
I'm the honest one here.
Yeah, yeah. When it comes to kind of just thinking about the monetization strategy for that, I think it comes down to kind of just the user intent, right? So if they have a high intent to use your product, then you have the option to charge them that annual subscription fee, which may be a large chunk of change, right? In the event that they do have less intent to use your product, they're still trying to figure that out. I think it's very advantageous to have the additional price points.
Okay, so subscription fatigue is one challenge in the current market, but there are many more. So what do you think are the current economic challenges impacting the app subscription model? And then how would you rank them in terms of this is nothing burger versus, oh my God, we're dying here?
Sure, absolutely. I think you kind of hit it on the head, actually, Joel, when you said that as soon as the new Game of Thrones is done, you're going to leave. So there's that churn issue. and the need to continue to provide great content that's engaging to the users. Netflix saw that. I'm sure we've all seen their quarterly earning reports, and without the continued content, they're seeing a lot of churn. So combating that churn horizon, and then it's even worse with the economy that we're in. And I think it's really hard with the inflation and the things that we're uncertain about. And I'm no economist. I actually worked really hard not to take an economy class in college. So, don't take that from me. But I am seeing the challenges that our users are seeing and seeing it personally. And so when their budgets are tight, they're less likely to subscribe. They're more likely to cancel. And I think that that's really tricky. And so Kevin mentioned multiple price points, and I think that's great. So you can capture users that maybe would churn at a lower price point and still have that recurring revenue. So there are a lot of challenges. I know we've been talking about tracking and stuff today. It is tricky, but it is definitely a puzzle that we're here to help solve.
Okay. So this deep dive into pricing strategy. Do you offer discounts or for in the first instance? And do you have different pricing tiers? And then do you have different prices for different geos?
I think it's really matching the user intent to use your product. So take, for example, if somebody comes through your app through like a search query, as opposed to browsing within the App Store, those two people are going to have two different intents. Theoretically, you should be able to charge the person who came through via the search query a little bit more just because they have a higher intent to use your product, right? So being able to kind of just do the segmentation that way, so it could be like either organic versus not, came from social versus not, those type of things. In terms of kind of just the mechanics of that, obviously that kind of blown out of the water after SK hadn't work. But during the onboarding process, potentially you can grab some of that intent data based off the user onboarding to get a better sense of like what they're thinking. Yeah.
Absolutely. At Together Labs, I focus mostly on MView, and for that we do offer a subscription, and we recently tiered it. And as part of that, we actually didn't have time to build out our quarterly and annual offering that we used to have. And so we're seeing users asking for that. So I think that that's something that a lot of people want. I want a discount. I talked earlier about how I'm using the Google One discount so I can have all of my photos updated. And I think that that's really important when you can make sure there's less opportunity to churn. If they've given you money for a whole year, they're more committed, and I'm definitely too lazy to move my photos somewhere else.
I was going to say, I've definitely seen more of the instances where apps or companies give you the option to kind of provide what you feel like is a relevant amount for the subscription fee. So my sense is that, that takes the guessing game out of the, trying to figure out how much somebody's willing to pay, right? Just tell me what you want to pay.
So you've actually seen that?
Yeah.
Like apps say, okay.
Yeah. Say, hey, this is, pick one of these selected options in terms of how much you can afford to pay or are willing to pay for our product.
Yeah. Do you have any idea how that converts?
I guess it really depends on when you're going to be asking for that as well too, right? So if you're providing that to a person or that paywall to a person, before they have any context of using the app, it's going to have a different outcome as opposed to maybe asking it a little bit later on, right?
Kevin, I feel like you're leading into every one of my next questions. You've seen these questions before. Let's deep dive into that. Like, how important is paywall optimization, and just how much testing have you done on it, and what results have you seen that can kind of blow this audience away?
You're putting me on the spot. I think just through some of the user surveys, I think the biggest drawback of like the paywall is just the pricing, right? So how can we make the pricing as like the most effective thing that we test? When it comes to the paywall, it's the standard stuff, like when did we ask or when did we show the paywall? Is it during the onboarding process? Is it after a certain amount of content? Those type of things. Obviously, the subscription benefits, and then the pricing as well. I think when you have all these ideas as well, it's also pretty advantageous to kind of figure out how you're going to prioritize them, right? So having this, scoring system for all these ideas that you have. So basically saying, hey, what's the impact of this test potentially going to be? What is the confidence that we're going to get the results that are expected? And then ultimately, what's the amount of effort to get this test up and running? So it could be, design efforts, dev effort, those type of things.
I think that's so important when you look at the effort that's needed to put something in place, because it's so easy to say, hey, let's just A/B test this and all the other things, but you actually need the assets to do that and the segmentation. In an earlier talk, Steve mentioned the paywall at different places, and I think he really nailed it on the head, is giving them more information early on and making sure the users know what they're paying for. It was mentioned earlier that it's like a contract with your users, and so being honest about what's going to happen. One of the things that we've tested before we tiered the program at MView was offering a low price point subscription. So the first month was 99 cents, and then it converted in full to the $10 price point every month after. And it's really important to communicate that to your users up front, because if they think it's renewing at 99 cents, they're going to be really upset, and you're going to lose that user. No matter how awesome your product is, no matter how much value they get, if that trust is broken, they're going to churn and go somewhere else.
Okay, so speaking about losing customers, what tactics do you have for maximizing your app users' LTV? So push notifications, deep linking, etc. Like, what's the secret sauce here?
I'll go first. I think if you're a product that relies a lot on paid growth or paid acquisition, I think it's no surprise that with the changes with SKI network, that's kind of affected the quality of the user coming to us, right? So having the idea that potentially these platforms are sending potentially lower intent users to your product is thinking about, like, how do we think about a monetization perspective? And then additionally, how do we think about it from a product perspective, right? Because you're probably going to be spending a lot of your time trying to convert that non-paying user to a paying subscriber. So it's a lot of the education of, like, hey, this is what the app is about. These are how the premium features can benefit you. And this is why you should ultimately convert to a paid subscriber.
To build off that, I think it's about getting the right message to the right user at the right time, which sounds easy, but it's really tricky. If you're managing mobile, which is Android and iOS, and then desktop, that's already 3 different segments with 3 different types of users. Then your segmentation of your app's users is different. You also then, of course, have, if you're global, localization efforts. And so translating things and making sure those offers are known, translating your push and pop messages when possible, and really focusing on giving the users content and marketing where they're at. You have to meet them wherever they are. And it is a lot more work than just running one campaign, but we found it to be a lot more effective.
Is customer segmentation part of your pricing strategy, or is it really just being straight up one price for all?
So the way that we do it is the same price for the majority of the globe. Occasionally, if things are really off, we might make a change. The thing that ends up happening, though, is the currency exchange. We kind of get caught up in that. So, for example, I have a lot of users in Canada who are like, your prices are way too high. I'm not going to pay that for a subscription. And that's just because of the way that the exchange rate is right now. And so we do get caught in that to a degree, and it can be tricky to navigate. So I think that when you segment your users and have different price points, that can be really helpful if you have the capability to do that at scale.
Yeah, I agree. I think it comes down to the amount of traffic that you're receiving within those respective regions, right? So if you're receiving a substantial amount of revenue there, it makes sense to probably match your prices with the purchasing power of those individuals or regions.
Okay. Yeah. So in a previous life, I worked for a games company, and I was responsible for launching subscription within our game. And I did it, and I was very successful, and I doubled or tripled our expectation of subscription revenue. And I felt like I was a rock star. But then I looked, and I actually decreased the IP revenue 4 times. So no one noticed. So I still was a rock star, but I felt bad. So my next question is about like apps that have different revenue streams. Like, what do you do for monetization and pricing strategy when your app has other revenue streams like IP and advertising? And how do you, is there a cannibalization risk? And how do you plan for that in your monetization strategy?
I think it's tricky. It's definitely an issue. But one of the things that I like to focus on is I'd rather have that recurring revenue. Sure, I'd love you to buy a credit package for $5, but I'd prefer you have a subscription for $5, $10, or even $20, which is our top tier. When we were launching our program, I thought the lower price point would perform the best, but actually we found that the $20 a month is performing really well, and it's really status-based. They do get more in-app currency and things like that, but focusing on bundling products and putting them together in a way that reduces cannibalization and leans into that long-term relationship with that customer to have them give you that money month over month is the way that I look at this. And of course, then upsell and cross-sell. Once you have your users in the subscription, there's no reason they can't also do an in-app purchase. You spent all your monthly credits? Great, I've got a deal for you for some more.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way of kind of just increasing the LTV perspective, the way I kind of think about it is like, well, we have the people who subscribe to your product, and then we have the people who will never subscribe to your product and actually pay. So how do we extract some value out of the individuals who will never pay, right? So for us, it was more so kind of focusing on like, hey, we'll send you a referral invite, invite your friends, they'll get an extended period of like a free trial on our platform. The thinking here is that potentially, if you're more engaged with the platform and your friends more engaged on the platform, either one of you or both of you will actually end up subscribing. And then kind of just what Jenny mentioned in terms of kind of just the upsells, how do we extract more revenue out of our current user base so it's not just the subscription cost that we're optimizing for.
Cool, so we actually have some questions from the audience, which either means that you guys don't like my questions or that we're just really getting you guys into it. So let's take a couple. Have you ever done a price increase, and how did you manage churn?
Yeah, so this is really interesting. When we tiered our VIP program, and it started at that $10 on desktop, and then we introduced the $20 a month, which is our Diamond VIPs. And what we did, because I didn't have a feature, a top tier anchor feature at the time, is I adjusted the chat rooms. So my $10 a month folks were used to getting 10 chat rooms a month, and I made that a Diamond feature. And then I lowered the amount that the mid-tier was getting. According to my usage data, that was going to be fine, no problem. However, according to my users post-launch, it was a problem. They weren't happy. So what we were able to do was to talk to our users, get their feedback about why they wanted more chat rooms, and we were actually able to, even though we had done this price increase, we rolled it back. It wasn't the right fit. And what we were able to do is give the mid-tier 10 chat rooms and the top tier 15. Now that does kind of eat into the in-app purchases like Joel was talking about, because you can purchase them a la carte. So it was a little bit tricky, but it was worth it. The cannibalization of those sales was way worth it for the $20 a month that they're handing over. So that's how we managed it. Even if you plan and do user research, you're not always going to get everything right. And I think it's about being able to navigate that and roll it back if you have to. So we were able to do that, and the users are really happy with their chat room change.
I mean, when it comes down to price increase, no one is ever going to be happy, right? But the fact is, you may be leaving money on the table. So if the metrics provide that, the way we kind of looked at it is if it increased our average revenue per user, then it made sense to kind of just deploy I think if you have another kind of just win-back strategy in place too for those churn users, that could be pretty powerful.
Okay, and I guess you kind of touched on this, but just follow up to that question. What level of churn should we expect when we raise the price? And what experience? Are you even allowed to say that?
I'm not sure.
10%.
Might be under NDA. No, I think that when you raise the price, it depends what the value you're providing is. It all goes back to that product value and how much your users are interested in that. So if you increase it, you're going to see some churn, and it depends how you increase it. I recommend a stair-stepped approach. So if you're going up, you can go up slowly over time and have less of a jolt to your community. However, it depends what you're after. Sometimes you do need to raise that price and get that revenue in, and it's okay if there's a jolt to the community. You just better make sure you plan for it and communicate that to your internal teams before you start building that product.
Is there ever any scenario where it makes sense to lower the price?
I think in this current environment, yeah, it probably would make sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is more kind of just directionally based, like macro factors, right? But I think monetization as a whole should be always like a continuous test because, macro factors aside, your product is probably changing, everything, with optimizations and everything. So, in my opinion, it should always be a continuous thing.
Okay.
Depends what your competition's doing too, right? If you have a competitor that's undercutting you and you're hemorrhaging users, absolutely cut that price, keep your users, and then figure out how to raise it in the future.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so back to my questions. So I'm a games guy, so I'm going to ask a couple games-related questions. And actually, members of the panel, IMVU is kind of a game, and Kevin actually has a games background, so we're gamers. So based on a report that App Love and Liftoff came out with in June 2022, only 11% of game apps have subscriptions, whereas 80% of all revenues for non-game apps are based on subscriptions. So my first question is, why do you think subscriptions are more prevalent and monetize so much better for every type of app out there besides games?
So I have to argue with you that I do think they do well for games. I think it can be really successful. However, the data shows that they're not being used. And I think that's because of the way that games came up in mobile and looking at the freemium offering, making this shift. Back in the day, we would game on a console and it was $60 for an N64 game and you'd have to go to the store and grab it and bring it home. And now you can just download a game on your phone. It's so easy, and the community is expecting free. They're expecting free trials. And so with that, it's really, the pendulum has swung, and I think that the games community is starting to provide more subscription offerings and get users hooked and committed to a game. But it's really easy to just download another game. And so you need to commit them with their product, with the value and the dollars.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's just the expectations, right? If you think about it, games were the first, I guess, vertical to really monetize an app at scale. And at scale, it was always IAP. So I think it's kind of just really stuck with the industry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So to Jenny's point, games and non-games apps actually may have more similarities in terms of subscriptions. According to GameRefinery data, 20% of the top 200 grossing games do utilize subscriptions, and then 60% of the top 200 games in the US utilize Battle Pass, which I would argue is a non-renewable subscription, right? I mean, if you're in Fortnite and you're placing Season 10, how many of those players are going to play Season 11, Season 12? It's just a subscription that doesn't all renew. So there's a two-part question. Like, what can non-game apps like music and video, fitness, learn by applying the best practices that games have used to monetize? And then the second part of the question is, what can game apps learn by applying the best practices that non-game apps are doing with their subscription monetization model?
Of course, both sides can learn from each other. I think that it's really interesting when you look at Battle Pass because it sometimes is easier to commit to something, to hand over those credit card details when you don't have a renewal. But it's setting people up to play again. They offer different like outfits and packs and things that are seasonal, and you can only get it from that season. I don't know about you guys, but if you game at all, play any Blizzard titles, there's that cow, the secret cow. There is no cow level. But anyways, you can only get it one time a year when you play Diablo, and that's going to get people to log on. It's a community excited about an inside joke. And when you can do that, that's where the real power is and how you can get those users to keep handing you money, even if it's not a auto-recurring subscription. Auto-recurring, of course, is better for the books, less likely to have churn. But if you're going to get more users, definitely lean into that. It is tricky. I think on the other side of things, offering those in-app purchases for smaller amounts and smaller access in non-game titles is important. For example, I subscribe to Down Dog, the yoga app. They got me with a free trial in the pandemic, and now I can't delete it. Love it. But I think right now what they could do is offer access to 1 or 2 classes with a small payment, and then they would have that in-game purchase and get people closer to hitting subscribe, starting to build that trust with a smaller purchase point.
Yeah, I would have to go agree with that as well. I mean, with potentially, less intent users come to your product, I mean, again, they're probably not willing to shell over to the annual fee. But there is still the opportunity to extract some revenue out of them, right, with the microtransactions. And if you think about, how these platforms optimize, right, if you can optimize for an install and potentially convert some of these people with these microtransactions, that's a big opportunity for scale. In terms of kind of just what else non-gaming apps can learn, I think just the idea of creating FOMO, the gamification aspect of it, I think would be something that can, be beneficial for the non-games. And then vice versa, for the gaming apps, they could probably benefit from anything that they haven't had to deal with previously, like win-back campaigns. So they probably have, in a sense, of like re-engagement, so that'd probably be pretty similar.
Yeah. Cool. And since this is what I do for a living, I'll answer the question as well. Yeah. So I think what non-game apps can kind of learn by looking at Battle Pass is the thing that the top game companies do well at Battle Pass is they really figure out what their users covet the most, right? So when you look at like what are those top elements in the Battle Pass, it's whether it's game currency, whether it's unique or not unique items, whether it's VIP type of rooms, whether it's like cosmetics, the ability to progress. That's like really the key, like and that's what you have to do with your subscriptions for non-games. Like, what do those people covet? Battle Pass, the big difference with a Battle Pass and a subscription is that there's a reward track with a Battle Pass. And I've never seen a subscription with a reward pass. I guess that begs the question of, could you add a reward path within a subscription? For health and for education, yeah, you could. For music, for video, probably not, but I've never seen anyone do it, and someone should figure it out, because that's really what drives it. In terms of what games can learn from non-games and subscriptions is that when you look at the data, again, that lift-off, App Supply report, it shows like, everyone knows this, like games are driven more by monetization by whales, and apps and subscriptions is more, wider. So like that's the thing that games could really learn from like the app side of the business is like how do you monetize the non-whales in a better way through subscriptions? So, which is already doing. So one last question, and then we're gonna play a game up here. So let's look at a crystal ball. What do you think the subscription app market is gonna look like in the future, say 3 years from now? And do you think you have to rethink your monetization strategy as you get older?
Great question. Unfortunately, I did leave my crystal ball at home today, so I don't actually know. But what I do know is that the pendulum is going to swing. and it's going to change. And what your users are looking for, what they're willing to pay for, the way that they pay you, whether it be in dollars or cryptocurrency or whatever the next thing's going to be, that's going to keep changing. And our monetization strategies have to change to match that. If you're not constantly reevaluating your monetization strategy, you're leaving money on the table. So make sure that you're talking to your users, that you're looking at the industry, you're looking at the different trends that are out there and figuring how that relates to your app and your users.
Yeah, I think some of the trends that I kind of been noticing, if you take, for example, like you think about the freemium app, there's the option to do a trial, then you convert to a paid subscriber. There's the option for the hard paywall. In this case, you can't access any of the content without signing up for a trial. And then one that I've been seeing more recently is more of the everyone gets full access to the app for a certain amount of time, a certain amount of content, etc. I think this one really makes sense, especially if you're in the early stage of an app, just because it provides a user base for you to kind of continue on with product enhancements. So you collecting the data, you have the opportunity for people to experience the full app and play with the premium features. And then additionally, there could potentially be that network effect of them inviting their friends as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
So got a couple minutes left. Because we got a panel of subscription monetization strategy experts, we're going to play a game, and they didn't know I was going to do this. So I created 3 fictional apps, and I want you guys to pick it. Pick which one you want. One of the 3.
I want this one.
All right.
Okay? So what you do is open it up, tell the audience what your fictional app is, and then on the fly, tell us what your pricing strategy is, how do you optimize the payroll, and how do you optimize the LTV. So, Jen, you want to go first?
You're not going to go first, Joel?
No, I'm not.
Okay, I'll go first.
No pressure.
So my app is Sig Wolf Freud, a subscription app providing mental health advice to dogs via telemedicine. So I'm not sure.
Not the owners, the dogs.
Yeah, no, to the dogs for sure. I'm not sure if you handed me this one on purpose. I do have a very naughty corgi at home. His name is Mr. Tater, and he has recently been on the counter eating the nice French butter. So he needs this app. If someone wants to build it, I'll subscribe. I'll hand you all my money. I think that the way that I would do this is I would definitely have a free offering to try the subscription out, and it would give you real value by letting you figure out what the heck to do with your small dog that keeps getting on the counter. We didn't think about it when we took him to agility class. I really shouldn't have taught him to hop and climb. That was bad. So with that, we'd give some value to people, let them figure out how to control their crazy dogs, and then start charging them. So if you want to, reach out for telemedicine help, for teleconsult, maybe there's some acupuncture upsell for the dog as well, that would be fantastic. With that, then we would charge, so there'd be a subscription base, and then above that, you can add on additional things. So that's what I'm thinking for Sig Wolf Freud. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to do with Sig Wolf Freud?
Tell us afterward.
Yeah, come find me. Tell me about it.
For all of us network.
Absolutely.
Okay, Kevin.
Yeah, mine is the Pizza and Roses. Swipe right, deliver a pizza to your bro or bra. Swipe right, deliver roses to your boo. I probably think about this in a perspective of like a Uber One type of scenario where you get a discount on every type of order that you place with them. I don't know if you should really be encouraging delivering pizza on a regular basis, but I mean, to each their own. In terms of kind of just potential for upsells, maybe it's pizza night with your bro. Maybe you can get some type of local discounts at a bar, planning dates for discounts at other places, those type of things. Yeah.
Cool. So I got Retire Blocks, a sandbox game offering game experiences for senior citizens. So you get Roblox for senior citizens. I guess what I would do is I'd have a very strong creative mode where the senior citizens can create their own creative game worlds based on nostalgia. So, 1950s, 1960s, 1970s. I'm going to date myself, 1980s. Man, that was a great decade. In terms of how much I charge, they're retired. I think I'm going to go for the high end. I'm going to go for the ones who have money, so I'm going to charge a lot. I'm going to do, I'm going after the grandkids' college fund, so I'm going to go $20 a month. And I am not going to offer a free trial because I do not want to explain to anyone over 50 years old how that works. So,
That's fair.
I think that's it. We're done. If you have any questions, if you want to reach all of us, reach me up on LinkedIn. You look me up, and same with everyone else.